Think of photography as a chain process that begins when you take your photos and ends when you send those photos to your client, either in soft copy or in hard copy if you're printing them. Therefore, that means that retouch is the second part of the process, and what gets to this particular part of the process is going to determine what can get out. That just like that famous computer saying of garbage in, garbage out. So, as you're taking our photos with the intention of retouching them, we have to do what I call shooting for retouch. That is making images that are going to be the best canvas for us to do retouch on. Okay, and this comes with doing a number of things as we take our images. And just to clarify, some of the things that you need to do as you're taking your images cannot be corrected in post-production. Things like focus and getting a sharp photo. No software is going to sharpen your out of focus photo and make it as sharp as it could be without introducing a lot of artifacts and making it look not so nice. Okay, so let me teach you guys how to shoot for retouch, and I'm going to tackle this from four parts. I'm going to talk about the image format, I'm going to talk about exposure, I'm going to talk about detail and sharpness, and I'm going to talk about color. Let me begin with image format. RAW or JPEG? Here we are again with the famous and I think the oldest war in photography, RAW versus JPEG. But anyway, both RAW files and JPEG files can be retouched to a nice outcome. Okay, so whether you are a JPEG shooter or a RAW shooter, whatever images that you create can be retouched as long as they meet the following boxes. Number one, they are sharp enough. Number two, they have good color, because frequency separation is going to be dividing our image into sharpness and color. So if your image comes into the software without any a good amount of these two components, whether it is a RAW file, whether it is a JPEG file, you cannot get anything decent from your separation. So whether you shoot JPEG, whether you shoot RAW, your images can be retouched to a good outcome using frequency separation. Okay, so that's it about the image format. You can shoot RAW, you can shoot JPEG, any of them can be retouched, okay, effectively using frequency separation. Point number two is about exposure, and that is simply put how bright or dark the image is. Okay, and exposure determines what amount of detail and what amount of color we have in the photo. That's why if a photo is too overexposed, we are going to lose color, and things that are supposed to be maybe blue or yellow are going to become white, and you're not going to have color. And by default, by not having color, you not have texture in those particular parts. So that means that as you're taking your photos, you need to get close enough to a correct exposure as possible. Okay, so not too bright and not too dark, because if it is too dark also, you need to do a lot of recovery in post, and in the process of doing this recovery and bring up the brightness of this particular photo, you're going to introduce artifacts into the photo. Okay, so the best thing to do is for you to get nice exposure, make sure that you expose your photos nicely. Okay, at that you're going to have little to a very little to no exposure changes needed in your photo. So number one, that is it about exposure. Aspire to get it as right as possible, because the less you have to change exposure in editing, the better. Okay, and that's it about exposure. Then the other aspect of this shooting for retouch is sharpness stroke detail. And here, I'm going to spend a bit of time on this, because let me just clarify. Sometime 2 months ago, I was working somewhere on a very big assignment, and I was shooting continuously for 5 days, sometimes working up to 15 hours a day. And I think I shot more than 9,000 images from that particular assignment. And I was shooting sometimes from a moving car, sometimes shooting moving subjects, sometimes shooting landing planes that are moving very fast. And the thing that I took home from that particular assignment, out of the 9,000 photos I took, all of them had detail and sharpness. None of them was out of focus. So the secret to getting sharp and detailed photos has no shortcut. You just have to master your focus settings and your focus buttons and the scene that you're shooting. Okay, so what has been working for me when I got into photography, among the first thing I learned was back button focus. Instead of me pressing this button here to focus, I'm going to press this one here to focus. So that means I'm going to divide the role of taking the photo and focusing between the shutter button and the back button. I'm going to leave the shutter button for just taking the photo and this one here for activating the focus. Another benefit of that is I can always have my focus activated as I'm taking the photos. As long as I have that pressed in and I have something to focus on, I can take photos and the focus is going to be in point and lock all the time. So for your focus settings, I can highly and confidently recommend the following settings. Number one, use autofocus continuous. Use autofocus continuous. I think Canon call it servo or something like that. But for Nikon shooters, I'm a Nikon shooter, we call it autofocus continuous or AFC. So this means that as long as you have your focus button engaged, the camera is going to actively keep focusing where the focus point is. Okay, that means that even if you move in the course of taking the photo or the subject moves, you're going to still have the focus being locked on the subject. And so use autofocus continuous with a single focus point. Do not give the camera the power to decide where it wants to focus, because it is going to pick the simplest part for you to focus on, the part with the highest contrast. Then this single focus point, where do you put it? Many trainers of photography are going to tell you to put it on the eye. No, I did not put my focus point on the eye. I put my focus point on the tip of the nose. Why? Look at my face from the side. So if you put your focus point here, remember your depth of field or the area of the photo that is in focus start from the point of focus backwards. Okay, so if you're taking a portrait of me and you put your focus point here, there's a segment of my face that is in front of that focus point, including see, draw a straight line here. You're going to find that my nose, my mouth, my lips are in front of the focus point. So what I normally do, I do not put the focus point on the eye like everyone says we should. I normally put the focus point on the tip of the nose, because once I have my depth of field starting from here, the photo is going to be in focus from the tip of the nose to the lips all the way back. And that is going to give me maximum detail on the skin for me to go and retouch. So that is it about focus and sharpness and detail. Get your focus right in camera, and if you shoot Nikon like me, please use autofocus continuous AFC with single point selection S, and that single point, do not put it on the eye, put it on the tip of the nose. Okay, if you're shooting from the side, you can actually put it on the cheekbone, because if you're shooting me from this particular direction, the most front part of my face is going to be here. Okay, not this eye and not this nose. Okay, but if the subject is facing forward like this, put the focus point on the tip of the nose for that reason I've told you. And the last thing that you have to get right as you're shooting for retouch is color, because color is key, especially if you're going to be shooting portraits and you need to produce people's skin tones as they are, not darker, not brighter. Okay, so as a photographer, you need to master the art of producing color accurately, whether it is by getting it right in camera, if you maybe are shooting JPEG, or by color grading to get it right in post-production. So if you're going to be a JPEG shooter, you can tweak your picture profile to get the kind of colors that you want of the camera. If you're shooting RAW to color grade later, be sure that you get the person's skin tone right, unless you are shooting creatively and you want to get to grade their skin to a different kind of look. Okay, so that is it about shooting for retouch. And just to summarize, number one, image format, both JPEG and RAW files can be retouched using FS. Number two, exposure, always get it right in camera. Number three, sharpness and detail, always have your photos in focus. And number four, always get your colors right by using the right color temperature and or color grading nicely in post-production. That is the end of this particular video about shooting for retouch.